Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are going to be going over critical opening, grand detonation, Thundersteel arrow, detonating arrow, marksman. So there's a few goals I had when starting this character. The first one off being no bugs, of course, so we're staying away from the ridiculous amounts of negative resistance you can get inside detonating arrow, as that is currently carrying all of the Jokor's blasting knife builds. I also wanted to actually put passives into marksman as well. And I also wanted to, use a bow as a marksman. So essentially, we're going to be playing detonating arrow, but without the daggers, as that's probably the best way of going about it currently if you want your build to survive next patch. So yeah, detonating arrow marksman. If you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting content like this on YouTube, and it also shows me that you want more stuff like this in your sub box. The idea here, of course, is we abuse the node inside shift critical opening, which allows us to get an automatic critical hit on our next attack after shifting. This actually got buffed recently, as the old nodes that used to give you percent damage after your next shifting actually got changed to more damage. This is very important, as it allows us to stack a very large amount of more damage multipliers to make our next attack hit as hard as possible, and that's definitely what we're doing here with shift currently and detonating arrow. Detonating arrow has a lot of more damage multipliers. Right now we're focusing on the explosion of detonating arrow. You could squeeze out a little bit more damage if you want tendrils, but I wanted to go for the big bada boom, the big explosion, And we're actually scaling a very large amount of area. We have area from Thundersteel area, which gives us 100% more area. So that's just doubling our area. We have increased area from our idols. We have increased area from our helm and chest mods. We have increased area on our amulet. We have increased area on everywhere we can possibly get, just to make this detonating arrow big. And I'll be honest, I'm actually a little underwhelmed, to be honest. Obviously, I do know if you went with Sucker Punch, you could end up with a bigger one. But I shouldn't have to focus into Sucker Punch just to make my detonating arrow hit a decent size of the screen. Even with the extra area from Black Quiver, specifically the one where you have to pick up a quiver, then shoot your DA and all that, and then you get the area. Even then, the area is kind of a little lacking. It's big, obviously. Don't get me wrong, it's big, but it could be bigger. Now, of course, that could be achieved with some exalted affixes and stuff like that. But essentially, if I'm investing this much into AoE, I should be hitting the entire screen. So maybe they could buff the base size of the explosion on detonating arrow. Hope that would make up for a lot of the investment that I put into this. Some other things the character has gone through. So specifically, my luck with this character was absolutely awful. Okay, so the plan for this character was to push to 300 corruption and get my blessings. We did not end up getting my blessings, so you're actually watching non-empowered blessing gameplay at 300 corruption. That is mainly because I was in doing my flat armor blessing from Spirits of Fire, and I was about 250 corruption by the time I got my flat armor blessing, which, if you don't know, is a very long time. And I was like, you know what? We're almost already to 300. We might as well just ignore the rest of the blessings and just push up to 300 just to be done with it. Because after I'm done with the character, we're going to move on, because I'm going to be testing a lot of different characters. So I can't spend forever on the same character. So I was like, screw it. Next character, right? So that's why we're going to be capping off here, even though the blessings aren't finished, because I was just insanely unlucky. In terms of defenses, the defenses are very mediocre on this build currently. That's not because it's a marksman, it's because my gear's awful. If I was Merchant's Guild right now, or if I actually spent a day or two playing in a COF. I'd be glancing below capped on top of my HP and have a little bit more dot mitigation. But right now, I don't really have much of either of those, which makes me a little bit squishier than I would want to be. But thankfully, with the playstyle of the hit and run tactics of DA, with of course the critical opening synergy, it means that we don't have to invest too much into defenses. The biggest problem I had, though, is the way detonating arrow works. We're utilizing nodes that increases the arming time to give us a lot, like a much bigger hit. The problem is it increases the arming time. That is a big problem on a lot of situations because, you know, hitting something and dealing damage to them is our only way of leeching back life as a detonating arrow build, as this kind of build, other than, you know, some shenanigans we can do with puncture, which we'll talk about later. But essentially, you know, hitting something is the only way of gaining life back. Well, if the delay upon a delay upon a delay, like, you see the problem there. So that's the biggest problem with the build by far, is just the delays upon delays that you have. You don't have like that fancy trick like Void Knights have, where you have that Abyssal Echo leech working for you and stuff like that. So you definitely have to be a lot more careful with this build. This build's definitely not for everyone. It's a very active playstyle. You have to manually dodge a lot of things and of course run around and picking up black arrows. Definitely not something I would suggest for anybody. I would like invest a lot more into defenses than I did, of course. Like I said, my gear was ass, so whatever. But yeah, well, that being said, let's go in game and talk about the character more in detail, shall we? Okay, here we are in game with the character, level 93. This is actually way less than I usually be at this time, at this level, but that's mainly because, like I said, I got really unlucky with my blessings, so I actually spent significantly less time than I would on most characters on this character. Is actually finishing about the 2 day mark in maybe a few hours here, so it's actually less than 2 days to get to 300 corruption, which is pretty bog considering I leveled this from scratch in character found. So yeah, that's great. So let's talk about the skill, shall we? So for detonating arrow, main thing we care about is getting as much AoE as possible with outburst. We're not utilizing infused discharge. Eventually, if you get like a +4 to detonating arrow chest, you could invest into this and start investing into mana, and you can get like a nice like 70% more damage multiplier later on. But that's a little bit of effort. That would be like something I would do in Merchant's Guild. And of course, 5 points into Well Crafted for that 50% more damage in the area. 1 point into Thundersteel Arrow. This does add a cooldown to our detonating arrow, but since we're only attacking it every so often, we can benefit from that more explosion area, and of course the 30% more damage. We do grab all the extra charges. This allows us to run through monoliths and use detonating arrow a lot much faster, because if you don't have these extra charges, you'll end up in a lot of situations where your detonating arrow is not on out of like cooldown, which means you're screwed. So it's better to have these extra charges. Then 4 points into Beast Slayer. This gives us like a decent amount of more damage. Then Lethal Blast. This actually helps us counteract boss DR slightly, as it gives us a little bit of a bonus for that, which is fine. Now let's talk about Shift, the more important part of the build. Specifically, we don't care about any of these nodes. We just care about critical opening for the always crit. This makes it so we don't have to invest in crit on our gear, which makes our damage significantly higher than it could be in a normal build. And of course, we're grabbing all the more damage here. It's like 50% more damage on our next attack, which is great, as we're only attacking every so often. We're only attacking whenever we have shift up, then some movement speed. Sadly, we don't have enough levels to like get to the crit multi and all that, but like it's not too big of a deal. We're making detonating hero hit like a truck. Then Dark Quiver here. Dark Quiver was really hard to nail down because I was trying a bunch of different things like Until Dawn and stuff, but this is what I ended up with. Mainly just grabbing all the increased damage here, grabbing the area here, making our detonating arrow really big, getting the more damage here, then the more damage here. All of that combined leads to a very large amount of damage. Is actually one of the more stereotypical ways of building Marksman right now, in combination with, of course, Smoke Bomb, creating the shadows for you. Now, what's really annoying as a big hit build is when you play as a big hit build, you're actually not hitting enough to apply armor shred stacks, but thankfully Smoke Bomb has us covered thanks to eroding fumes and swirling fog. Both these combined means we can get to armor shred soft cap very quickly and allows us to actually, get the armor shred on enemies without having to hit them too much. Very nice utility. And of course, we're making the shadows for the Dark Quiver, and we're grabbing Moonlight Bomb for the Silver Shroud. Puncture, TLDR, Rapid Strikes, go for the mana. The rest of it doesn't really matter. That's just the main things about Puncture. Just gives us something to do while we're waiting for our Detonating Arrow. And that's pretty much it for skills. Let's talk about the important passives. So important passives, mainly Coated Blades for that 80% more damage. The mana consumption's fine. You just want that more damage. In the Marksman here, grabbing the Elemental Arrow synergy. This is like a very large amount of Elemental Arrows for us, which allows us to hit like a truck. This is very mandatory for early on to actually play the video game, because early on you actually don't have access to a good bow like Reign of Winter, meaning that you need to have all the flat from this in combination with Elemental Barrage and Fire and Steel and stuff. That all combined means that we can actually get a very large amount of flat damage. Also, as well, something I haven't done in the past, but this is really strong. That increased elemental damage with elemental arrows is insanely strong. It's 8 points for 200%. I never used this before, but like I realized you can actually put in extra points into this node. I didn't know you could do that. I forgot. It's that strong. It's crazy. That's a lot of increased damage for free. Mana Wrap helps us sustain our mana on our Detonating Arrow. Detonating Arrow AoE, of course, crit multi, sharpshooter stack, stuff like that, the usual. The only thing that you're going to be grabbing with the rest of your points, if you're curious, is just grabbing as much HP as possible, and then eventually grabbing all of the glancing blow stuff. Eventually, when you feel comfortable with your build, you can actually start shaving points around everywhere and start building into glancing blow and try to get that glancing blow capped, as that will make you feel significantly tankier. The first things off early on, when I was just messing around with the build, getting as much HP as possible is mandatory, as it makes you feel much better as a marksman. Otherwise, you're going to feel like tissue paper. That's pretty much it for passives. Now, one thing I want to point out, my blessings are all fucked up, so let's talk about it. Either Void Res or Crit Multi here, empowered, obviously. Lightning Res or probably just Lightning Res here. We're like a Tri-Elemental build. We're not doing that much lightning damage, so like mainly we're doing Tri-Elemental. Of course, empowered Crit Avoid, armor percent empowered, and then armor flat empowered. That'll make you feel significantly tankier than I do right now, as I only have 26% armor. I could have significantly more if I actually got the blessings that I wanted. And that's pretty much it for, of course, the blessings. Let's talk about the gearing. The only, I wouldn't say mandatory, but eventually you're going to want a Reign of Winter. That's because Reign of Winter has the most flat on any bow in the game. This combined with LP on your bow, meaning you can actually get a very large amount of flat very quickly. If you get a 2 LP one, you can get 2 rolls of flat damage. Mine actually rolled min roll, which is sad, but it's whatever, it's not a big deal. That's all we care about is the flat damage. We don't care about anything else on this bow. And then, of course, getting more flat damage on it later on with LP. Helmet here, damage while wielding a bow. Eventually, you want Detonating Arrow AoE to, of course, get even more clear. You want as much AoE as possible with this build, mainly so that, you clear the trash much quicker. This base is pretty good as it gives you the cooldown recovery speed, HP, right? Amulet here, perfect amulet area, crit, res, HP. Absolutely beautiful. Wish it was on a better base, but whatever. Too late now. This chest, absolutely beautiful chest. Probably could have a sealed T1 +1 to Detonating Arrow, or you could have tiers 5 Detonating Arrow and tier 1 sealed Detonating Arrow level. Either way, doesn't really matter. Quiver here. Quiver's kind of meh. Exalted bow damage percentage is actually pretty good on a quiver. It turns out it's a lot of percent damage for just one affix. Might actually be the way to go in the future. And of course, a flat roll of any kind, then res. I like the Skelnier quiver because it gives you extra crit multi, but you can use any of the other ones, but mainly the flat one or the crit multi one. Rings here. HP, dexterity on the prefix, and then strength probably for the armor stacking. Our prefixes kind of suck. You could do elemental damage percentage technically, but it's like meh. So strength is probably the way to go. HP, resistance, dexterity. One moment here. Ooh, ooh. Sorry about that. I had to cough. Ooh, I'm good now. All right, so belt, HP, cooldown recovery speed, damage, cleanse, and Praetorian belt, of course. We want as much cooldown recovery as possible so that we can spam detonating arrow in shifts. More damage, right? Gloves here, HP, Eternal Gauntlets, really good base for flat. Then you'd want area exalted probably on this, and then like dexterity probably, something like that, or maybe mana if you're starting to stack the mana stuff later on. Boots, movement speed, vitality or dex, cooldown, HP. This was going to be a pretty good pair of boots until it bricked on me, which made me very sad. Then relic here, crit multi, eventually like maybe elemental damage, dex. Like it's really hard to say on this one. Then res, HP. And then for idols, detonating arrow AoE, detonating arrow AoE, detonating arrow AoE. You can actually have 4 of these in total if you squeeze them in, which would be great. That would be great. And then you can like put in some like damage HP idols on the side or resistances, wherever you can shove it. Yeah. With all that being said, this has been Dread. I enjoyed the build. It's just, like I said, I got cucked really hard with my blessings, and I was just like, all right, I guess we're just finishing the build now, because I have plenty of other builds to test. Bye, guys.